Good afternoon and welcome to a Oak Harbor City Council workshop. It is the afternoon of November 17th, 2 p.m. And this is a normal workshop time for Oak Harbor City Council. So I'd like to call the workshop to order. Due to COVID-19, this will be both a physical meeting location and a virtual meeting per Washington Proclamation 20-28. Due to Governor Inslee's order, masks are required for everyone in council chambers, regardless of vaccination status. City staff are participating via teleconference. Guests that are included in staff presentations will be excused from the Ring Central meeting at the conclusion of the agenda item as appropriate. Today's meeting may be viewed live via YouTube and on cable channel 10, HD 1090. We have no action items on today's agenda, so I will not ask our city clerk to call roll. We know that Councilor Mack and Councilor Goebel are not in attendance today, but I believe the rest of our council is joining us from their various locations. So we know that we're not sure, but I think we have the rest of council. We're not quite sure yet.
We don't have Councilmember Wassinger or Mayor Pro Tem.
Oh, okay. It looks like we don't have Councilor Wassinger at this point in time or Mayor Pro Tem Munns. I would like to open then with a item that I asked to be placed on this agenda, and it's we titled the item as a preliminary discussion on constructing a new windmill, including preliminary design, location, and solicitation of donations. The reason that I'm bringing this forward is I've had a number of inquiries about the windmill and about council previously talking about reconstruction at the same time that the old windmill was dismantled. That in that same action, the council said that a windmill would be reconstructed. So there have been a lot of questions about that, and there wasn't a lot of conversation at that time, but I certainly have had some interest, quite a bit of interest, as a matter of fact, from a number of different citizens, businesses, and I think I just found out this morning that we have had that some of our council people have been involved in discussions regarding the construction of a new windmill. So with that, I'd like to just turn, I think at this point, if you don't mind, I would like to turn it to Councilor Wiesner to talk a little bit about his communications, and then certainly would like to hear from anybody on council that has input regarding this subject. So, Councilor Wiesner?
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, I was approached by a group of citizens about a month and a half ago regarding, putting together a grassroots effort, on the private sector side to get the project off the ground. And we've made some preliminary headway. We've gotten some folks from the community who have expressed some interest, from some folks from the construction community who have also expressed interest to possibly look at this as a public-private partnership type of a build. Obviously, in the very early communication plans, but we certainly do have a grassroots effort going on, and we are in the process of gathering up a set of the plans for the windmill as it was originally constructed, to use that kind of as a basis, and obviously, it's near and dear to several people's hearts, including mine, and so there are some folks who have expressed also the idea behind some financial commitments, which also, I guess, lend to that possible public-private partnership. Obviously can't be done without, the city. There's a long process to talk about placement and all of those things. And I appreciate you taking the time, Mayor, to, talk with me about it this morning and kind of pursue some of these options. You get, we're all very preliminary in these discussions, but the discussions I think are quite serious, and they're with folks I think that certainly have the capability to help us facilitate this on the private end. And obviously, I think there's I certainly speak for myself, that I think there's some interest on the public end, right, to certainly get this moving forward. So, I'm certainly going to suggest that we take this momentum and see what we can do with it. And I don't know how exactly you picture moving forward, but I intend to continue working out with the folks in the private sector, as also being a private individual myself and a business owner, and pursuing, whatever, help we can get on that. And I just feel as though with the private sector behind it, we may be able to move the project along a little quicker than anticipated if it was a public project. And so that's kind of the efforts I've been taking.
Thank you, Councilor Wiesner. One thing I did fail to remember this morning when we spoke was that one meeting that I had did involve a staff member, and he's listening here today. And thank you, Gideon, for everything that you do. And I roped you into that conversation earlier, or into that meeting. And I know that Gideon has some plans, Councilor Wiesner, that might be good for comparison, if not, part of what's going on. So and I see Gideon grinning there on his camera. He knows that I'm going to volunteer him to help in this process, to kind of be a point person here at the city for communication. And in light of the fact that he's got a file on it, got some information. And so you spoke about some other parties that are interested in different levels of interest, whether it be financially or just, to be involved in the construction part of it. So let's have them communicate with Gideon if you will do that. And then I'd love to hear if anybody else on council would be interested or have questions. I see a hand up from Councilor Heisen.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Councilmember Wiesner, for bringing this forward. The the idea of a public-private partnership appeals to me. I think that this is something that the community is obviously enthusiastic about and passionate about. And it's been my understanding, at least it was my understanding as we were approving the phases of the park, the reason we didn't immediately replace the windmill was because we wanted to put it somewhere in a real pride of place, in a significant location. And, we had great visions of it being the centerpiece for a roundabout at the opening of the park there by the Beeksma Gateway Park. And that didn't pan out because there wasn't room, the engineering, we couldn't make that work. So instead of just randomly plunking it down somewhere just for the sake of saying that we replaced it, we were holding off until the next phase of the park and really giving it a pride of place and making it a showpiece, really. I mean, we really want it to be stunning and to almost kind of be a gateway to the park. And so, it was out of respect for the windmill that we didn't immediately plunk it down anywhere. And so, I don't think it was a funding thing. I think it was a planning thing. But if there are members of the community that are willing to put some time and effort into figuring out where a placement would be, and if we're hearing loud and clear that that the community at large doesn't want to wait until the next phase of the park is implemented to get it done, then absolutely, I'm willing to entertain any and all ideas that people are willing to bring forth. It would be really exciting to actually see this, get moving forward. I'm excited. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Heisen. Anyone else with any questions or input at this point? Okay, not seeing any. We will move on then to our next item, which is administration. And we have our communications and IT manager, Sabrina Combs, to talk about legislative priorities for 2022. Go ahead, Sabrina.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Mayor and Council, or actually good afternoon. See, Mayor keeps teasing me today about that. So I am going to be sharing our legislative priorities, and this is the draft version. And as part of this presentation, I'm also going to be giving you information about what other organizations are doing and how we use that to draft our version. Is everybody seeing the slides correctly? Okay, just want to make sure. All right. So first of all, we took a look at the Association of Washington Cities and the legislative priorities that they created for 2022. On their website, they've put some great information out about why they're putting those priorities out and what those priorities are looking to address. In addition, they drafted a version of their legislative priorities for us to look at. As part of that, they gave some additional information about passing a transportation package and an additional worksheet on that information and why they're focusing on that. They did the same thing for ensuring public infrastructure funding, as well as the Protect Transportation Benefit District Funding Authority. So we took a look at that information, and we already had some of those items on our list. And then we also looked to compare our list with the Island County Council of Governments. And here is their draft version that they've been working on. And with that, just to focus in, District 1 has these three focuses that they're looking at from District 1 Island County's Commissioner. And then District 2, this is their list. And then District 3, here's the list for this area. And all of these were in your packet, just to reassure you that you've seen this. And then each of the town, cities, and the port, the South Woodby Port, are also had their own list of priorities. So here's Coopville's. And then we have the initial list that we provided. And of course, this is in draft form. The city of Langley. And then the Port of South Woodby. So with all of that information, we focused on what we were going to include in the city of Oak Harbors. So we did keep some of our items. We did some minor revisions to a few of them. And then we looked at invest in local infrastructure, so secure additional funding to create and improve public facilities. So of course, we want to continue to focus on this. Then there's workforce housing, which we know is an ongoing item for both council and staff. Economic recovery and development, we're continuing to work on that, especially in a post-COVID environment or a continuing COVID environment. Support of the Naval Air Station Woodby Island. Transportation enhancement, so support adoption of new transportation revenue package with an emphasis on maintenance and preservation funding that provides an equal level of local funding while seeking additional sustainable revenue options for municipalities. So again, we're continuing to work on that. And then environmental sustainability, which we know is important to this area, especially when we think about our, ocean creatures and, the orcas and all of that and our salmon habitats. And then we did add one for support public safety. We wanted to make sure that we were looking at some of those legislative items that have been created or ones that may be created in the future, and really making sure that they have a positive reflection of our first responders. So those are the items that we listed. So our next steps in this process is that I want to give you time to think about this, or tonight, or this afternoon, give me comments, and let me know if you have any feedback on this initial list. And then I'm giving you through November 23rd to submit your comments by 9 a.m. And then my objective is to return to council with a resolution with those revisions on December 14th. And then once we get that approved and adopted, we will then distribute those to the Island County Council of Governments, the AWC, and elected officials to start our lobbying efforts. So that is the process. Do you have any questions?
Thank you, Sabrina. Turn to council
Yes.
for questions. Sounds like they're going to get some material to study more closely, and some time for questions along the way, if I heard that correctly.
Yeah, so they have time if they want to look through the material in the packet and just send me emails with their questions or comments. Additionally, if they have any comments tonight, I'm willing to take those as well.
Okay. I'm not seeing any hands up at this point.
Mayor,
Oh,
Mayor, can I follow up again, City Administrator?
yes, go ahead, Mr. Oborn. Go ahead.
Yes. Yeah, as the representative on the Council of Governments in your behalf, we've already started this lobbying and utilizing one of the areas we're adding on here, the support of public safety. I did also mention that to Representative Gilday and Representative Paul, who were at the meeting, and brought that up as a priority, having this already in the draft form, and got some commitment from them to look at tweaking the law to help us. I know we've talked about that a lot, and Chief Dresker's here a lot, has given the council a very thorough review of that with previous legal counsel on all the challenges and the ambiguity and trying to fix it. And we want to make sure that the fixing goes in the right direction. So Chief has done a really good job. And so I think that's really made sense to add that as a priority, and certainly the other priorities we have on here. I concur that they really continue, and I appreciate Sabrina working really good on getting the graphics and making this look really nice. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. We have a hand up from Councilor Wiesner.
Thank you, Mayor. After doing this for 4 years now, right, and we've had, I know, several discussions about legislative priorities each year, and we all kind of know, right, that this last minute lobbying that we do with these priorities, it's just kind of a reminder. It's a reminder of what we're pushing year round, right? Because we're not going to go in and create any new legislation, 2 months before the legislative bodies meet. We're not going to necessarily create any new bills or new ideas. Those are all kind of in the works right now. So this is kind of a reminder, and I guess there's a thought in my mind is to, each year we go out kind of with this very generic list of those items that we would like to see happen. And the reality is some of these items are items that are going to be brought to the floor and discussed, and some of them aren't. But maybe, just as a thought, maybe we should have in there some of the legislation we don't want them to support, right? We don't want them to support any additional legislation that takes away the ability of our police officers to protect our community, right? We don't want them to support any more legislation which puts restrictions upon housing density or things that are going to continue to drive up housing. I guess it's just a different mindset, right? We're trying to put a reminder in our legislators' heads of those items when they're on the floor and they're in debate and they're in discussion, those items that are important to us. And I think by expressing those items that we would like to not see any additional restrictions or legislation on, maybe a little bit different way to put it. And that's just my thought from a communication standpoint, and it may have a little more impact if that's in the back of their head that, hey, this is the type of thing that we're being asked to not support. And that may be a little bit better message for us to send. Thanks.
Thank you.
It's a different way of looking at it, and we appreciate that. Thank you, Councilor Wiesner. We'll put some thought into that. Anyone else? Okay. Not seeing any. We will then go on to our next item, which is under Public Works, Harbor Heights Sports Complex update. And I believe we have our interim Public Works Director, Mick Monken, today. Mick, welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you. Council, I'm going to go ahead and switch screens here and give you an update of where we currently are standing on this project. Okay, I'm not quite sure why that 2 showed up in the corner, but so the focus of what I'm going to be talking about is
Mick, we're not seeing your chart yet.
Oh, okay. Let me try it again here.
Our Public Works Director Munkin. So, DPW.
Are you seeing it now?
Yes, we are.
There you go.
Great.
Yep.
Excuse me on that. Okay, so today what I'm going to be talking about is an update on the complex and primarily going to be focusing on the access roads. So what you look at the plan here, this is what's been used for the basis to examine the access to the park. Now I do want to bring up that I am aware that the council had made a direction to go with Gun Club Road. When I came aboard, I worked with the staff here and I wanted to take it to a concept level, and that's going to be the primary focus. So just to give you a little bit of the background on this, is the land was rezoned in 21. The council did select Gun Club Road in May of this year as the main access to it. Staff began the process on that of working with the county on Gun Club Road and what the requirements were. What had been discovered is there is some right-of-way issues. The right-of-way that's out on Gun Club Road, I'll show you in a diagram in a moment here. It's a 40-foot wide right-of-way, and the road that the county is requiring us to put in there is 32 feet wide, meaning that it doesn't have a lot of area to put the road in, put the improvements. There's overhead power out there, there's open drainage ditches, and there's an intersection issue. There's some grade issues out there on the east and west side of the road, and there also too is a skewed intersection. And I'll show you again in a moment, I'll show you a diagram on that. So staff did a study of other road accesses, other options on here that had not been presented to the council. So the engineering study on this to serve Harbor Heights, what's shown in the gold is a layout model. So what this does, it allows us to physically see what would be the needs for the road based on a rough preliminary layout, looking at the grades out there, drainage. The schedule has been prepared of how long it would take to construct the different road options out there. A detailed cost estimate has been prepared each of these projects, and what that boils down to is rather than doing a per lineal foot, which is a common way of doing preliminary estimates, this actually broke it down to units, meaning how much asphalt, how much rock, how much grading. It's short of a full engineering estimate, but it does give a higher level of certainty on the prices that are provided. When you looked at Northeast 7th 2 weeks ago, when the council looked at that, or a few weeks ago, that was a detailed cost estimate as well. But again, it's based on a modeling. And then review of impacts and benefits, that's going to be discussed. I'll have some details on that, of each of the options. So looking at the map on the right side, these were the three accesses that were looked at. And again, the council did make the recommendation, look at Gun Club Road. I'll explain to you why the other two were looked at in just a moment. But we did look at these three. Each one of them used the exact same cross sections, so you are looking apples and apples. So one on the Gun Club Road, that would be the minimum the county has, and it's a good standard. And I'll show you here what that is. So the typical road section, I'm starting with Gun Club Road. This section you're looking would have the two 11-foot lanes, the 2-foot shown on the left side. That would be a paved shoulder, and that primarily is for safety or for vehicles a little bit wider that have a shy distance. And on the right side, that 8-foot, that is a shared path, and that could be used for pedestrians and bicycles. Now, I do show a construction easement area because that diagram you see, that's a typical cross section, that line where you can see the arrow moving. To construct this road and not to be putting in structural walls, and there will be a couple areas that would be required on Gun Club Road, but to do the minimum amount of walls will require construction easement area along one side of the road. And that's just so that you can do the sloping rather than having to put a retaining wall up. So this is the model that I was referring to. There's been, each one has one. Each of the three road sections we're looking. So the existing right-of-way is, again, it's 40 feet on the west end. Here's the Harbor Heights Park over on the left side of the picture. It then widens out and it goes to 80 feet. What we're showing in the intersection where it goes to Oak Harbor, you can see that there's an alignment skew. So the road on the east side of Oak Harbor Street and on the west side, they're off by about 40 feet alignment. So what we're showing here is a roundabout, and each one you're going to see is showing a roundabout. The purpose of the roundabout is that it would eliminate the need to have turn lanes put in there. It'll also make traffic flow smoother, and it'll also be safer. So this would last into the future, so you'd get a longer lifespan. A good solution, but a difficult one, if you look on the very right side, the East Approach Road, when it goes into this intersection, because of the skew, a turn lane would be really impractical. It would be very obstructive to operations and safe operations of that road. So it would create a difficult intersection for operations. It would not be very smooth. This roundabout would provide a working solution, though. It is 100% in the county, and there are residents along it. It is not highly dense, but there are several residents up there. It's estimated to be about 22 homes. Northeast 16th Avenue, the typical section, this is going to apply to the next sections of road. The Northeast 16th Avenue was the one that I showed earlier in the diagram of the park. It's on the south end of the park, one to the west and one to the east, but they both have the same right-of-way, and they have the same road section again that was shown for the Gun Club Road, matching that of which the county had talked about, which I think for this park, again, would serve quite well. In this particular one, with this right-of-way of 50 feet, we show an open ditch on one side and a slope. We're anticipating that there would be very little, if any, retaining structures out there. So starting on the east side of the park, this alignment of the road, again, it would have a roundabout is what we're showing it here. It doesn't have to be a roundabout, but our estimate is based on that. And again, is you don't have to put turn pockets in. You can match into the existing road, and it would have minimum impact on the traffic movement on vehicles coming in, coming out, or in or out, excuse me, from the park access. And it also, too, would allow for people that are now currently using it traveling through what this intersection would be. They would have minimal disruption. It does require on this option to acquire 10 parcels. Some of those do have improvements on them. Because this is adjacent to the city, this alignment, this right-of-way currently would be in the county, but it could easily be annexed into the city, as this would be a public road and it would be contiguous with the city's existing city limit. There is no direct residential access onto this section of roadway. The last one, number 3, the Northeast 16th to Heller Road. This same layout, again, a roundabout. There is 2 parcels to deal with. Both of them are owned by the same property owner. This is identified as commercial property. It can be annexed into the city. Again, it's contiguous, adjacent to the city's city limit. And there, again, is no residents accessing this road. What you're seeing here, there's actually a detailed schedule to this, but this is just showing in a very broad picture. So on each one of them, we show a start date of March 2021. And that's done deliberately several months out from now because there's several decisions have to be made if we are going to proceed. But I did want to show the March 31st of how this would fit with the construction of the park itself, not just the roads. So what you're looking at here on the first one, the Gun Club Road, you see the arrow moving in there. The red line is the total construction time. So on Gun Club Road, it's estimated it would take to August 2023 to construct that section of the road, assuming that everything gets started on March of 2021. The second on 16th to Oak Harbor, it's a little faster, but it does have more properties right away to acquire. But it is showing that it's about a month quicker than doing the Gun Club Road. 16th to Heller shows April 2023. Construction-wise, Northeast 16th is the fastest on both of them. However, on Northeast 16th, it's anticipated that your environmental is going to be minimal, your property acquisition is going to be minimal because you're working only one property owner and it's undeveloped land. That's typically much easier to acquire than any property that has any residential or commercial development on it. The last line you see here on the green line, this is an estimated time frame based on what the city needs to complete the project per the grant. The grant says that June of 2023, the construction is supposed to be done. The reason you see July of 23, that's 1 month past it, is that accounts for the closing period on that. So project costs, again, these are detailed cost estimates. And on construction, when you look across here, the Gun Club Road is mid-price on this one here. Of all of them on there. Northeast 16th Oak Harbor Road is a little less. And the reason why is that when you look at the two projects, the Gun Club Road, there is a construction part that makes it a little more difficult because of the limited right-of-way. There's a number of retaining walls that need to be put up along the south side of the road for a portion of the road, which brings its price up. The Northeast 16th Oak Harbor Road does have some cost into that. I'm sorry, I'm going to go back to Gun Club Road. So right away, we're showing zero cost for right away. There will be some costs for easements. We did not calculate that into this. The design is relatively low on this one. It's the lowest of the three. Partially is because you do have an existing road in there. However, part of that road, because of the grades and the drainage, may need to be removed and reconstructed. It is open, and you're not going to be as concerned with the grades because you do have an established centerline grade in there. So in its overall cost, it's 3.08 million, so making it actually the lowest cost. On the Northeast 16th to Oak Harbor on that one, where I said the construction is lower, you do have a higher right-of-way cost because you've got several properties that need to be purchased. The estimated value on that, every one of them used the same at $25 a square foot, and that's for a residential developed property. And the design is higher because there are some issues that are needing to be addressed on that one, and that is to establish a grade. There's a storm detention pond on the south side of that that's existing for a development that needs to be addressed, and how that's going to be dealt with. So it came in at the highest of the cost of $4.13 million. Northeast 16th at Heller, construction came out at the lowest, and there's a few reasons for this. One, it's about 800 feet shorter. So looking across, apples to apples, the construction cost is about the same per lineal foot, but because it's a shorter section of road, the construction is less. The right-of-way costs are up there, but again, there are two property owners on that, and this was assumed that it would be commercial property would be what the acquisition cost would be for right-of-way. Design costs, this is pretty straightforward on this one. It has a relatively gentle grade in there, and there's no edge conditions that are anticipated to be requiring extra design services on that. So it comes in at the second or midway, so 3.12. So doing a comparison on here, I'm going to run down just quickly through this. So on the Gun Club Road, in a comparison, existing right-of-way is narrow and will need easements on it. On 16th, Oak Harbor, you've got 10 property owners to deal with. Again, these have homes on them, as well as the ones with the easement, but that doesn't count that. Yeah, and on Northeast 16th Avenue at Heller, it's only right-of-way, 2 parcels, undeveloped parcels. Gun Club Road, currently, unless you annex in all of that area up there, it's going to remain within the county, so any improvements we do are in the county. The other 2 road segments can be annexed in. Now, I showed the next one in red under Gun Club Road for the intersection because it is a difficult one. We've got grade issues and we've got alignment issues. The roundabout will address the alignment issue. We still got some issues on the grade that would need to be fine-tuned when you're going through the design, and which could have impact the cost being a little higher than what is shown in the estimate. On both the Northeast 16th of Oak Harbor and Heller, both of those are easy intersections. The right-of-way is big enough to accommodate the roundabouts, and these would be what are called mini roundabouts, large mini roundabouts. So they're the easiest to transition through, and they're also the lowest cost. Probably, we'd estimate they would be comparable to a standard intersection because you don't have to do improvements very far from the intersection, no turn lanes. The Gun Club Road is shown in red it goes through a county neighborhood. This is really important because going through a neighborhood, each of these projects are going to have to go through the SEPA review process. When you go through an existing residential neighborhood, you do face the issue that the property owners could push back on it, and you'd have to go into a more depth study. If you have any low incomes up there, it could get even more difficult in trying to get this expedited, and that's each of these projects right now is showing expedited. In both the North East 16th Avenue, they do not go through any neighborhood. It's undeveloped land right now, other than one is adjacent to an existing storm pond on the south side. The last on possible delays from home impacts and park construction. This is a critical one because when the project goes into construction, if you go with Gun Club Road, as it stands right now, the only other access in there would be through a residential neighborhood currently in the city, and you would be facing the same issue of the SEPA and the impacts to a neighborhood. So you could possibly see the homeowners there pushing back that it needs to remain open, but also too, when the construction starts, if this is the only access road, it's going to be difficult to reconstruct this road and have park construction, which needs to take place at the same time if we're going to meet the deadline date, that basically the two of them are in conflict with one another. And I show that as a medium to high because it is possible to do it. It generally will cause some costs because the contractor will have to build half a road, open it up, build the other half of the road. So it's not as easy as just going straight through it. On the Northeast 16th Avenue to Oak Harbor, I rated that as a high because the possible delays from right-of-way acquisition, when you have a property that has a home on it, those property owners can delay the project. First, they can decline to sell the property. The city has options to go through condemnation or to just try to negotiate. But there is a high probability when you have 10 properties that you need to work with directly, and you'll need to address any mitigations that they feel they have on their property. And there's a possibility of it would be removing of trees, that it may be changing the character of their land. On Northeast 16th Avenue, again, it's undeveloped property, so we put it low to medium. The reason, I would think it's closer to low, but the reason we say medium is that that property owner may not want to sell it. It seems more likely that that property owner, if he has commercial property, it would be to his benefit, it's a mutual benefit, if the city pays for right-of-way and builds a road there, it helps his property to get access, because one of the properties right now is landlocked. The limited park access during construction, I think I pretty well covered that. There would be no other access to the park except Gun Club Road, if that's the one we chose as the main access. The other two, that isn't the issue. Those are roads separate, they'd be new roads. Gun Club would be the access for construction only during that, and that would be minimum impact of going back and forth. I don't hold these as, any of these as negative, but Gun Club and Northeast 16th Avenue to Oak Harbor, both of these are moderate to steep, and the moderate is on the east end or west end closer to the park. The steep part is when they get down to Oak Harbor. And on Northeast 16th Avenue at Heller, it's a gentle to moderate grade. The must keep the road open for during construction is what I was referring to earlier, that you've got residents, they need to have access. They got services, deliveries, waste services, septic services that would need, and mail services that would continue to need to get access to their house at all times during the construction. The other two road options do not. There are existing utility poles out on Gun Club Road along both sides, primarily on the south side. Those are going to need to be relocated. And that has a time factor, it could have a cost factor. There are no utility poles at all on the other two being the newest. On price, I'm just going to hit Northeast 16th Avenue at Oak Harbor is absolutely the highest cost by $1 million. On Gun Club Road and Northeast 16th, while they do show about $40,000 difference, I put them both in as moderate costs. So really they are comparable between the two of them in cost. So in a summary on here, the Gun Club Road, and I'm doing each one individually, it is the lowest cost, but again, it's about $40,000. If we have higher costs on mitigations or on the need for the right-of-way, that could easily eat up to $40,000. On the gold, those are what I see as adverse. I just didn't want to keep putting red on here, but it's a county neighborhood, and the impact during the construction and access to the park, which would be a long range on it, that would be something that would be a continual for until other alternative accesses are provided to that park. It does have the longest construction time. Permitting, I did say it may be difficult. I don't know with the density up there if the residents would be pushing hard on this, or if they're set back far enough that they wouldn't seem to have the concerns on that. Intersection definitely is a concern. And of course, the construction being that you need the access for both at the same time. And the last part is this would be an investment in a county road that the city would use, but again, the investment would be 100% in the county. On Northeast 16th to Oak Harbor, this again is the highest cost of it by $1 million. We got to 10 properties that we need to deal with for the right of way. And then on the positive, there are no residential access, which allows for the park construction to access Gun Club Road uninterrupted so that both can go simultaneously with no impact on each other. And we're investing in a future city road because the city has identified Northeast 16th as a arterial system, and this would just construct a portion of that. On Northeast 16th Avenue from Heller, when I say the comparable cost, again, at this engineering estimate, it's a $40,000 difference. I would say, again, that should be considered neglectable because $40,000 at this level, it could go either way, is a little more, a little less. There is right-of-way needed on it, but there's only one property owner to deal with the two parcels that would be needed for the right-of-way. No residents again. It would serve a future commercial area, so there's actually a multi-bonus. So the city gets an access to get the road built, and it would help this commercial property to utilize and get access to both of their properties, which does not need to come off of Heller. Park construction comes off Gun Club Road, and it's an investment into the Northeast 16th corridor. So the recommendation is Northeast 16th Avenue to Heller. Now, that'd be the initial access alignment. There's a lot less to be concerned on of impacts to residents, impacts to environment, because we would be constructing in an unimproved area, and we could control that rather than potentially impacting residential properties while the construction is going on. And afterwards, again, we've got a road that's not in the city, something the county needs to go through and approve and access on that one. So the action for the council that staff's going to be seeking is the council do concur that the initial access road to Harbor Heights Park be Northeast 16th Avenue from Heller Road. And that concludes my presentation, and I'll answer questions.
Okay, thank you, Mick, for that presentation. We'll turn now to City Council and Councilor Servadius.
Thank you, Mr. Monken. Couple of things here. I like roundabouts wherever we can utilize them, so I think most of us would concur on that point. Question: if you could back up, probably to this, it was right before the cross sections. That piece you had just the three. Okay, this is a great slide. I don't know if there's. I think I can zoom in on it, but I don't know if anyone else can. So, a couple of thoughts. Well, I guess the first thought, are we doing anything right now? All of these options reconcile themselves within 2, 3, 4 months of each other. Is there anything we're doing right now in the way of clearing or anything we can be doing in there? Since we know where the first two or the first sets of fields and parking are going, is there anything we can be doing to buy back some time and speed up this entire process? Are we doing anything on the ground right now in there?
We are not. There is something that could be done that you could start immediately, and that would be the acquisition on 2 and 3. Number one, we are possibly going to need it, but until you do a survey out there and do the design, you don't know what it's going to be.
So until we do a survey, why don't we know what the design is? I thought we already went through all of those decisions.
No, the design that you're seeing out there, this has all been put, let me change slides here. Show you. This is what's called a concept model. And what this does is it uses existing information. In this particular case, it's the assessor's map for the topography. So when we went out to the site, I'll give you a perfect example. Can you see my arrow?
Yes.
Okay, we went out to the site, we walked this road. What doesn't show up in this topo is there's actually about a 3 to 4 foot drop in some of these areas. This doesn't show up at this level of detail because these are taken off aerials. So they're good for preliminary studies, but they're not accurate enough. And we got a really tight right of way here. So in this particular case, we would need to do a detailed right of way and then start doing the design to figure out what actually is going to be needed here.
So that makes sense. I guess I was commenting on design for the first couple of fields and parking spots in the park. I was talking about that design.
Oh, on the park design, I'm sorry.
What could we be doing on the ground right now to speed that up? Because of the options 1, 2, and 3 that you presented, you said that there's a grant date of July of 2023 that's kind of driving all these decisions as well.
If the park is going to open, we have to have an access road. So that's where the roads come in. Could they start doing work on the site? It is currently under design. It is possible that we could get a permit and start doing clearing, but until they have the final grading plan, not much grading could take place. But again, trees could be coming down. We would need to go through a permit process, and we need to work to get a SEPA, but that would be in-house. So it is possible we could do that relatively early, as an early action.
I mean, it just seems like right now, and I'll get to more detailed comments, but we have a known park area. We have a known access, really only 2 that exist. We have a road that terminates right there by the numeral 1, and we have a road that terminates on the south at Elwha. We spoke very strongly that we didn't want a bunch of construction gear and stuff running through Elwha. So I'm just curious why we couldn't get something moving in there to buy back some time with regards to basic ground clearing. I understand there'll be grading and all that stuff to be figured out. Are all of these roads 1, 2, and 3 going to be needed and developed eventually?
No. 2 and 3 absolutely needs to be developed. 1, you don't need to develop that road. If you have 2 and 3 in there, you would have 2 major accesses in there, and you don't have to deal with that complex intersection on Oak Harbor. And it could be used as just a service road, not a main access.
Okay, and that makes sense. Right now, though, it does terminate right there to the east side of the park. Gun Club Road exists up to that point. It just doesn't exist in an improved status.
Right. There is a right-of-way that goes all the way up there, and there's a road that's about 14 feet wide when you hit the actual gun club and you go to the west, that has a paved service road, so it's not a full developed street.
Okay. Next question is, or I guess it's a comment. I would hope that the county would be very helpful and acquiesce, since this is not as much, it is a regional park for all of North Whidbey, including probably at times, depending on the events that will be happening here, that draws all the way from South Whidbey. So I would hope that the commissioners would work with us to whatever degree possible. I know you said that you didn't put a dollar amount in there for any extra right-of-way acquisition, but I would hope they would work with us on a project like this that benefits the entire region. I jotted some notes down here. As far as the alignment with Rifle Road, which is what you're referencing, maybe if you could fast forward a slide, that might have been the crosscuts. The roundabout, the first roundabout you showed, there you go. Would it be possible to slightly, if we chose this route, realign Gun Club slightly to the south, and that other road is called Rifle Road, realign that if it needed to be, possibly, or a gentle curve as you exit that housing development there so that they align? Is that a simpler solution than all these turns and spins? And
It is something we can look at. There is some grade concerns there. You would have, first you wouldn't have a roundabout if you slide it over unless you wanted to purchase property from that one property that would be on the southwest corner. The idea being that if you do try to align it, I think you would end up having to do, well, either to acquire some more right-of-way there, and that was one of the things we tried to avoid, was acquiring right-of-way. You would have to reconstruct a road, but I think you would be able to get a closer alignment, but you're still not going to get, you're still going to have a skewed intersection, but you would make it less. And
okay.
Yeah, it would be a challenge.
Just a thought. Now, if we could back up a couple of slides to the park again, I still prefer Gun Club. Mm-hmm. One, it appears to be the cheapest. I would hope that over the course of the next 2 years, which is kind of what you're projecting, or not quite 2 years, 18 months, mm-hmm. somewhere in there we can buy back a month as far as overall project time. And then the next thing I look at that is always a discussion. It's a discussion we have with every one of these projects, is parking. If we come in off of 16th, either option there, 2 or 3 on the bottom, where does everybody park?
They would park up either in this upper area, or they can also be parking south, but there would be an access along here, along the east side of the park.
So that's another road that we have to construct with options 2 or 3 that we don't construct, at least not initially with option 1?
That is correct. Option 1 will have some of the road constructed, but not all of it.
So keeping things, trying to get the best balanced perspective. If we come in on Gun Club, as we talked before, the grant covers 50 parking spots. We've got a section of parking spots right there, but then we could have overflow parking in the gravel and the grass that we've talked about. We have a big pad there, not to mention everything that's north of that entry point, which right now is listed as grade break. On this graphic, it's listed as grade break. There could be a ton of parking right there, improved or not. And if those are the first 2 fields that we build, fields 1 and 2, everybody's right there. If we bring folks in on the bottom, then we've got to transit north, build the road running up the east side is what you're implying, and then get them up there to parking. So those are still considerations that I don't think we've factored in here. So, my gut still tells me I appreciate all this work, especially if some of these roads might be continuations eventually at the south end. It seems to me, for the overall project long term, to develop through the center and then be able to move north or south depending on how we develop that. That's all at the moment. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Servadius. Other input or questions? Okay, not seeing anything else at this point. We'll take those comments into consideration for sure. We'll then move on, I guess, to our next item, which falls under engineering on our agenda. Art project update, and for that we have our archaeologist Gideon Kaufman, who also serves as liaison to the Arts Commission. Gideon?
Hey, thank you, Mayor. Appreciate it. Let's see if I could turn my video on. There we go. All right. So again, want to see the presentation there?
Yes, we can.
Oh, okay, great. Good. Thanks, everybody. All right, so yeah, just a brief update on these art projects for you. So a little review of the project, some forthcoming efforts, and some time for a question discussion. I found a really good quote the other day: art is how we decorate space, music is how we decorate time. Kind of a cool one. I couldn't do any of this without our Arts Commission. So Therese Kingsbury is on the line here. She's joined us for this meeting, but We also have J.R. Russell, Cynthia Mason, Mary Himes, Mandy Rothman, and Carla Friend. We also have 2 vacant positions. I'll talk a little bit about that. City staff, John White. He's one of our accountants. He has provided us with a cost and analysis for every month, and he's shown up to the last maybe 3 meetings. Sabrina has done a wonderful job with media and whatnot, and some forthcoming efforts there. It's been really exciting. Blaine, for putting me on the commission, has been great. Julie, for her patience for whatever I do these presentations. She always helps out with them. Dawn has been wonderful, considering a lot of these pieces are going to be in art or going to be in parks locations. And of course, Sandra Place with all of her work as well. So the first piece is the Verena Schwippet piece. I just shouldn't say collection there because it's just one piece. That was installed at the Scenic Heights Trailhead back in May, or not May 2011, it was May 2021. It does have some needs. That's interpretation. There's an existing kiosk there with a blank spot for some interpretation and also media exposure. So again, working with Sabrina for that media exposure is going to be one of the forthcoming efforts. This project could not be installed if it wasn't for Talman Huckey and also Brian Rivers over at the Parks Department. They did a wonderful job pouring the concrete, putting in the pavers, and transporting the project. Just really providing a lot of help with that. The other one, so this is the Joseph Kinnebrew collection. I believe it's about 5 pieces. This is called Temple Blue. This is proposed to be put at the Pocket Park next to the old Office Max. What I need to do next is securing a contractor for the installation. It's DOT property, and for the longest time we were working with an agreement with DOT, and ultimately DOT said it's outside of the right-of-way. Go ahead and do whatever you want with it. And again, Sandra's been a tremendous help with helping with the contracting elements. This piece is called Meditation. So the first thing I want you to do is to imagine these in different colors. So it's going to be primary colors, so red, blue, green, yellow, orange, and purple. And it's going to be at the Boys and Girls Club. So it's going to kind of mimic crayons in a way. And this is 3 feet by 3 feet by 3 feet. So very cool sculpture. It does, need to be some repainting. As you can see, a little bit of rust. So a little bit of repair work, but that is about it. The Boys and Girls Club did sign the agreement. So Mick was going to present this, or Mr. Monacan was going to present this at this meeting, but I needed to get a resolution. So kind of a short-sightedness on my part. This is called Gate of Inspiration. So this is proposed to be at Flintstone Park. This is pretty much ready to install. It does need a shoreline permit though, or a shoreline exemption permit, since it is within that 200 feet of the high water mark. 3 totems. This definitely needs some repair work done to it. So it's kind of undergone some rust. So grinding that off and repainting it. And this is proposed to be out at Centennial Grove, so out at Oak Grove. So kind of a cool piece as you drive by. The Sebastian piece, the Angel de la Creatividad. The geotechnical testing was done a little over 2 weeks ago. And then the welding inspection might happen this week. The Drake Estate has contributed about $45,000 towards this project, so paying for the welding and the other elements of engineering. Once we get a signed okay from a professional engineer, I'll be approaching council for the passing ordinance 1934. That will really solicit the acceptance of the sculpture as a gift. After that, it'll be a resolution, but that'll happen once it's installed. This is one of my favorite pieces here. This is the Patrick McVeigh piece. This is the Acorn. What I just love about it are all of these Easter eggs. So here we have a salmon with some clams, also a tribal paddle, but just makes it kind of for a fun, exciting piece. This will be done next month. Right now, he's filling in these cracks with existing oak wood and then sanding it flush, essentially. It's going to take some time to cure, but that's about it. And he's going to be using a marine finish, so kind of like what you'd expect on a boat in order to keep it protected. However, having it covered would be really helpful. I believe the next slides kind of address that. So one of the locations we've talked about is right across the street from the PBY Museum. This is right next to Wells Fargo and People's Bank. So right there's that bench area. We even thought about installing it there and then moving it. And then we would move it to this spot here. So just west of the Dutch Boy, there's a Dutch Boy there. So somewhere in the middle there. I believe this was a pool that was filled in with pavers years ago. Let's kind of give you an idea of what it looked like what it would look like to scale. So for forthcoming efforts, filling the vacant seats, today I emailed Kit Christofferson. He's with the Oak Harbor School District. I believe he's an arts teacher. I got his name from Lowell Sipes, who was the prior arts commissioner, to see about either having him or somebody else with a school district involved with the arts commission. So that's what Lowell was part of. The commission is going to have a strategic planning meeting in January. So that'll be really exciting. The commission's kind of like in this groove now, I feel like, and it's just that the meetings are really fun and like productive, and they're really, really enjoyable. One thing that was brought to our attention by Mr. Monken and actually the school resource officer is having the skate park repainted. There's a lot of graffiti out there, and just having something that's just make it a little bit nicer than what is out there. A lot of cuss words and stuff like that. And then, as I mentioned before, working with our communication manager for media coverage, so more media coverage of cow, so that's installed, as well as the orca and the salmon out at Windjammer Park, which is next to the clean water facility. So from there, I'll entertain any questions or discussion. And as always, feel free to call or email.
Thank you, Gideon. We have a hand up from Councilor Servadius.
Thank you. Gideon, you're on the towel sculpture. One of the points you mentioned at first, you said media exposed. Something like that. It needs interpretation of media exposed.
Yeah, like media exposure. I
thought you said the media needs sealed or.
Oh no, just like a newspaper article or Facebook splash. Absolutely. Okay. Yeah.
That was all. Thank you for the report.
Yeah, and I think something like that, you could kind of kill two birds with one stone, because I think a lot of folks don't know about the Scenic Heights Trailhead. So I think it also gives some advertisement about that.
It's a cool little gem hidden over there. Thank you.
We have a hand up from Councilor Heisen.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Gideon. That scenic trailhead is definitely a hidden gem. So anything we can do to draw attention to that spot would be great. And I just want to thank you for the update. A lot of these projects are in the works for so long. You know, we hear about them preliminarily, and I frequently find myself wondering, you know, what's going on with X, Y, and Z. So to have a comprehensive update is really, really nice. I'd like to have more of those. So thanks for the effort you put into that. And if you need a hand on the skate park painting project, give me a call. I'm happy to help.
Wonderful. Thank you. And yeah, I think next year it's going to be the massive installation. It's going to be really exciting. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Okay, we'll move on then, it looks like, at this time to our final agenda item under City Administrator's Report. Administrator Blaine Olborn will take questions, if any, about the city. Do you want to say anything, Mr. Olborn?
Yeah, I have a few comments here. It's nice to come into a meeting and not be 5 hours into it like the last one. So have a little time, a little breathing room, and we're all a little refreshed. And certainly I appreciate all the great input from staff. And so, and also, I think last night, a lot of council input on thanking the police and fire and for the response. And certainly I want to recognize and put a shout out to other departments in responding, particularly the Public Works. Does a lot of response in road closures and trees trims and those kind of things. And so appreciate all three departments. And certainly the marinas had its share of challenges now, and certainly appreciate their efforts in getting things going and talking to Chris on a daily basis right now, and all the work that his staff are doing and addressing those. So I certainly, being a little timely here with the recent storm, want to acknowledge that. And I did thank I had an opportunity to communicate with PSC and pass on the thanks conveyed last night at the council meeting to the PSC. So on to my report. We did add a legal department, and it's kind of timely from last night's discussion about monitoring the cost. So I think we can dovetail the monitoring the cost in there on a monthly basis. And so we make sure we in advance here come back to the council if we need additional funding before we complete the RFP process. So Mayor, that concludes my report.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Olborn. Do we have any questions? I see Councilor Heisen. Did you still have your hand up?
Sorry, that was left over. I apologize.
Oh, no problem. Seeing then no other questions at this time, I think I will turn to the City Council. Any other input or items for discussion? Not seeing anything. Okay. Well, I too want to thank all for your efforts, whether it be for just this meeting, coping with the weather, and doing the many things that you do. I want to thank you for all of those efforts, and be safe out there. And we'll conclude this workshop then at 3:13 in the afternoon.